Hello, coaches. Hello there. It is Sanae Floyd here, business breakthrough coach and sales mentor. How are you doing today? So I'm really excited to come in here and talk to you about this topic. I've called this a simple truth about reality that changed my life. So I'm feeling really inspired, really excited. And I just want to say, if you're watching this, if you're watching the replay, please say hi, let me know. In the comments, just type in hashtag replay. If you're watching live, hashtag live. It's lovely to know that people are watching. So let me dive into this. I want to, like I said, I'm really excited about this topic today because this understanding of a basic truth about life and the nature of reality and how we create our reality fundamentally transformed my life and still does, because I'm still growing, still learning. So it continues to transform my life. So what I want to do in this live stream is share in the context of my experience, how what this truth is and how it changed my life. And then I want to share it in a way in the context of a client story and how it related to her coaching, business and sales, because that then may relate to you in some way. But whether it's, I was going to say, whatever's going on for you, this truth is a universal principle, as truths about life tend to be. So whether you're struggling with money situations and you're struggling to change your money reality, or you're struggling with, relationship stuff or your weight, whatever, this is a universal truth. So it's applicable to any area where you are fundamentally challenged and you can't seem to kind of change this situation. So the first time I had this breakthrough about this truth was in 2018. When I hit rock bottom with my debt, with my financial situation. So some of you may know a bit about my debt story, but in a nutshell, I struggled with debt for over 23 years. I hated it, and it seemed to love me. No matter what I did, year on year, every year I set a New Year's resolution. This year I'm going to be debt free. And the clue is in every year I set the New Year's resolution, because at the end of every year I was still in debt. So I tried every budgeting strategy, every kind of repayment method, all the apps, and I would get so far and pay so much off, and then suddenly I would self-sabotage. So and go straight back into debt again. And so I felt like a yo-yo dieter, trying all the debt diets on the market and losing some of it, but then always seeming to bounce back into debt and then being more in debt than I was when I was started. So really like mirroring a yo-yo dieter. And when I realized this fundamental truth, and bear in mind, I've been in debt for 23 years and tried everything. When I realized this fundamental truth and I applied it, I cleared my debt, which was almost £50,000. It was 47,788, I think it was to the pound. Just almost £50,000 in debt. I cleared it in just over 6 months. Now that felt like a miracle after years of struggling. And the interesting thing is I didn't do anything different apart from I changed my mindset. That is my state of consciousness. And there's a beautiful quote by Neville Goddard, which I absolutely love. I've got it written everywhere. Consciousness is the cause of all creation, the one and only reality. So when I decided, when I basically, I'd maxed out my biggest credit card, it was 18,000, my biggest credit limit. I maxed out and a payment got declined. And I knew that was it. And I fell to my knees literally in that moment. When I say I hit rock bottom, I hit rock bottom. And, that my whole body was in pain. I was completely stressed. I felt the blood drain out of my face. So when I say I fell to my knees, I mean that literally. And that was it for me, rock bottom. And I decided enough was enough. So when I hit that that moment, and it's a beautiful moment, that's threshold when you know I can't live like this another day. And I realize I've tried everything. I've tried everything. So there must only be one more place to go. And I knew that was within. So what I did, and what was the game changer, was I started to turn the spotlight inwards. And so what I'm going to say to you next is I'm going to break the steps down into 3 parts so you can really understand, like, this is the fundamental truth. And then you can, because it's broken down into 3 steps, you can then kind of apply it to any of your situations. But the first thing I really had to understand was that nothing has any meaning but the meaning we give it. Nothing has any meaning but the meaning we give it. So I was in so much emotional pain, and that pain caused so much stress because I'd loaded debt with a meaning. I made it mean stuff about me. So debt is just debt. But to me, my debt meant I am a loser. I am out of control. I am undisciplined. I am stupid. And so the first thing I did was I kind of took all those thoughts out of my head. I looked objectively at what are the narratives that I am running in relation to my debt. Okay, so that was the first thing. I just kind of looked at that. The second thing that then it kind of all like flowed, but the second step to this is understanding your narrative then creates, or the meaning you've given something creates an emotion that becomes your habitual state of being. So this is where it starts to get interesting, because when I looked at my debt, my nervous system went into a heightened state of red alert and hypervigilance, right? But, and this is the kind of critical to how I freed myself, I identified the overriding emotion. So I knew my nervous system was on red alert. When I thought about my debt, I had all these thoughts, all these like cruel thoughts about what it means about me. But when I identified, and this is what you need to do, you need to identify the overriding emotion. So for me and my debt, it was shame. I felt chronic shame. So whenever I thought about my debt or looked at my credit card statements, or I received a statement in the post or by email to remind me how much debt I had, shame would surge through me like a chemical cocktail. And then I'd hear the narrative, you're a loser, you're out of control, and all of that stuff. So you can imagine, I hated my debt with a passion because look at how it made me feel. And I believed if I didn't have this debt, I wouldn't feel this awful shame. But this is the mistake. That's wrong. It's not, if I didn't have this debt, I wouldn't feel this awful shame. That's where we go wrong. So this is the third step, the third piece to this. And this is the law of cause and effect. My debt was an effect. My debt was the result. This was the biggest turnaround for me, and where I knew the work was needed. So my debt was not the cause of my shame. My shame was the cause of my debt. So a deep-rooted internal state of being was manifesting itself outwardly as debt. And this is the reason I couldn't clear the debt and why I kept perpetuating more debt. Because if you imagine, if you're vibing at a frequency called shame, which is actually the lowest frequency on the human vibrational scale, if I'm vibing at the frequency of shame, and shame is going out there as a frequency, and like attracts like, fundamental principle of the universe, like attracts like, then I'm going to continue to attract anything and everything that is a match to that shame. Makes sense? So at some point in my sort of childhood, there is an inner child running around who feels inherently shameful, that she has picked up beliefs about herself that are shameful. And so as I grew up, I attached that shame. Maybe I learned something about money and debt, that debt is shameful. I mean, it was a narrative in my family, so I picked up that paradigm. And so there I am running around. The first little bit of debt I get as a student, we had grants then, so we didn't need the kind of loans that students need now. But I took out a credit card. I didn't need one. And that first one instantly triggered the shame. Didn't know it then. So then I had it, the shame had woken up. So then that was it. 23 years of perpetuating more and more debt, which was a match to the shame. So that in a nutshell is the story. And that's how I had to do the work on the shame. Once I understood the law of cause and effect, that the debt was just a manifestation and that was making me think it was producing the shame, but it was the other way round. So I want to share, the reason I'm sort of inspired to share this today is yesterday I was having a coaching conversation with a client of mine, and her biggest complaint was she's doing everything she knows how to create clients, showing up, hosting webinars, creating, sales funnels and working really hard, putting herself out there in a really big way, but nothing seems to be working. And we'd done the work on her messaging, her process, her payoffs, her offers, her pricing. Everything I knew was on point. So I knew that what was happening now was something mindset related, because she was really putting herself out there with this clear messaging. So in relation to my client, if you think about the 3 steps, like nothing has any meaning but the meaning we give it, whatever your sort of story about the narrative that you have about this experience, your reality, it's creating an emotional habitual state of being, and then the law of cause and effect. So if we look at those 3 steps in relation to my client who's showing up, doing all she can, really showing up large as life with a clear message, but still it's tumbleweeds. So let's look at what really was going on. So the first thing, the meaning she'd given this situation, it's proof I'm not good enough. I'm a rubbish speaker. I can't communicate. I must be dumb. My accent puts people off. So she had this narrative. So when we looked at, and I asked her, okay, so you've given this situation a lot of meaning, but what does it really feel like? And she said, well, it makes me feel invisible. Makes me feel invisible. So it's like, okay, that's interesting. So invisible really isn't a feeling as such, but what's the emotion driving that sense of being invisible? Like when you think you're invisible, how do you feel? And she said, well, God, I feel humiliated. I feel worthless because I'm doing all this work. I'm really putting myself out there and it's tumbleweed. So, you can imagine I feel worthless. I feel humiliated. Wow, there it is. This situation makes her feel humiliated and worthless. So when she looks at her situation, she gets this somatic physiological response called humiliation, called low self-worth. So this is where, and so of course she's credited how she feels to this situation. She's saying, I'm not getting any leads. I'm not getting any clients in spite of everything I'm doing. And that's making me feel humiliated and worthless. So here it is. Of course, it's the other way round. The law of cause and effect. Her internal level of consciousness is operating at low self-worth, at a level of humiliation. And when we looked at kind of how does that feel in your body, she was like, yeah, it's familiar. I've had this sensation before. This sensation of humiliation and low self-worth is nothing new. And in fact, she shared a story about how many years ago she was at a party, she'd had a few drinks, and she did something that had her hiding under the duvet for days afterwards because she felt really like crushing humiliation. So this feeling was familiar. So this is what really want you to understand. It's not your reality that is really responsible for your reactions and how you feel. It's your state of consciousness, your habitual emotional frequency that is creating your reality. And that's why there are, the sayings that wherever you go, you take you with you. And people say, different places, different faces, same shit. This is so interesting and such a game changer when you can understand, because whenever something is happening around you, a situation or an experience, and you're like, this is triggering me, you've got to look at, right, what is the emotion? What is the story I'm telling about? What is the meaning I've given this situation? What is the feeling that this story has given me? You'll know it's not unfamiliar, and therefore I need to change this state of emotion, because when I can change that, this situation falls away. This situation is no longer a match to me. So therefore I won't perceive it anymore. And that's the truth about rising up in states of consciousness. Your consciousness is the creator of all reality. And if you think about your narrative, like my narrative, I'm a loser, I'm undisciplined, you know, I'm out of control. My client's narrative, I can't communicate clearly. I'm dumb. We can never think and behave beyond the story, the identity, the paradigm that we have for ourselves. We will never behave in a way that is incongruent with our internal state of consciousness and our narrative about who we are. So when we can start to break those cords, break those bonds, break those ties, and the emotional state, we rise in consciousness, our whole reality changes. And that is how I was able to, after 23 years of being in chronic debt and feeling chronic shame, I was able to clear that 50,000 debt in just over 6 months. And it did feel like a miracle, but that changed everything. And just one last thing about that, what I will say, just to kind of really kind of put a cherry on the top, is I was going to say put a ring on it, is that when I thought about what happened in my debt experience at the end of it, you know, when I finished that experience and I wrote a book about it, when I think about that, and I was thinking, what really happened? Like, how was I able to clear that debt in 6 months? Like, what really happened? And I think about because when I hit rock bottom, in that moment where I literally maxed out and I fell to my knees, and I made a decision in that moment. If somebody had come along and said, here, Sanae, here you go. Here's a check for £50,000. Clear your debt. We love you. Clear your debt. I'd be like, oh my God, that's a miracle. Amazing. Thank you. I would have taken that check, cleared all my debt. But I guarantee within 3 to 6 months, I would be straight back in debt because I hadn't done the inner work, hadn't changed the cause, hadn't raised my level of consciousness to someone who no longer feels shame and who no longer resonates at debt. Well, debt was for me the manifestation of that shame. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this made sense. I hope this kind of resonates in some way and gives you some kind of value that you can go away and work with and think, right, what can I change? What do I need to change internally that will completely transform my reality? And it's such a magical experience. You know, yesterday when we lifted the lid on this for my client, she was like, oh my God. She said, I can see it. This humiliation, this sense of worthlessness has been driving this bus my whole life. And it was just like, and I cannot wait to see what she does in the next few weeks, because she's now showing up, you know, she'll be showing up with a whole new level of consciousness from clearing this together. So guys, as always, so much love to you. Hey, Britta, thanks for watching. So much love to you as always. Have a great rest of your day, and I shall speak to you all again soon. Bye for now.